Hello and good morning. Today we're doing a look with the last palette that I own from Natasha Denona to basically conclude this series, and that is going to be the Glam palette. I don't really have other palettes from Natasha. I do have one mini from her, but it's currently in my declutter pile. I've cleaned it up and it's up for sale, so I don't consider it as my palette anymore. So these are pretty much all the palettes that I currently own from Natasha Denona. I'm going to start doing my makeup because I actually need to be at work on time today. I'm helping a colleague with something, so I promised to be there on time for her. So I'm going to take my Inglot eyeshadow base first. So this episode is going to be quite the jump in time for you because I pre-filmed the 4 episodes that you have seen so far about 2 weeks ago, which is also why sometimes it all seems a little bit out of context, because when I was talking, I talked about the Yucca palette in quite a lot of those videos. Yucca, I really don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm just going to say whatever comes first. I talked about that palette quite extensively in that series, but at the time the palette hadn't even been released, or it was about to be released. I don't think it was released. So I talked quite a bit about it, that even though it seems like very much a color story that would appeal extremely highly to me, I for some reason wasn't attracted, and then I went into deep analysis thinking that probably it's this balance between shimmers and mattes that's throwing me off. But we are now in the present, so I'm filming this video literally like the day before you're going to see it. I'm going to take a little bit of Auric Glow Lash to put underneath my eyes. So since then, a lot of you have commented on my videos that you are very much impressed by that palette, because the shimmers especially seem to be some next level type shimmers that Natasha Denona has never actually released before. And I must say, I am really intrigued. So I think it is possible that I will maybe on the short term order this palette. I'm taking the Dior Backstage foundation. I still don't think that I would go out and purchase this palette full price, although I'm pretty sure I can probably find a code on Cult Beauty or Look Fantastic at some point. I think Alice bought the palette literally when it was released, and she could already use like a 25% code for it. So I think maybe I will do something similar as well, because I'm just really curious, and the colors are very much, you know, something that is appealing to me. Those beautiful mustardy, goldy greens and impactful shimmers. I am intrigued for sure. For concealer, I'm going to use my new Love the Dior Skin Correct concealer. Really enjoying this concealer. This is the shade 1N. The shade of the foundation that I used, by the way, was 2N. And I do have an update on the Nude Allure Quint, because I think I mentioned in what's going to be literally my previous video for you that I purchased the Nude Allure Quint together with a backup of Bronze Bliss, because I'm only human and I'm weak. And I have zero regrets about it. I've already worn Nude Allure twice and I adore it. I'm going to set the foundation with the corresponding Dior powder in the shade also 2N. And of course those quints come in that new special formula from Pat, which I actually really enjoy. So all in all, although I was slightly embarrassed by purchasing something against my rules, I have no regrets about it, and it was totally worth it, especially because I bought it half off. Let's quickly do brows before I forget. I'm going to take the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. And I'm actually going to be away now for a few days. We are going to Sofia from tomorrow until next week, Tuesday. You are probably not going to notice, because between tomorrow and Tuesday there will be, you know, tomorrow's video, which is going to be this video on the Glam palette, and one more video that I have pre-filmed that I'm very curious what you're going to think about. So I will probably post it around the weekend, because it's already pre-uploaded. I just need to make it public. But I'm really curious what your reaction to that video is going to be. And I'm now realizing that I'm hyping you up and it's really not that exciting. But anyway, we're going to Sofia for a few days because my mom's turning 70 tomorrow. And I actually already wanted to go back home for my dad's 70th birthday, but unfortunately that was smack in the middle of the pandemic and we couldn't really do that. And I always had this, you know, fantasy that I'm going to hop on a plane and sort of like surprise my parents. But knowing my parents, it's probably better not to do that. My mom and, you know, passed it on to me. He's the kind of person that likes to be prepared. I can't just show up, especially if we're with the whole family, without her having prepared, you know, food, our lodgings, and, you know, mentally have prepared that we're going to be there for a few days. Plus, I think she's going to freak out if she sees me at the door. I'm going to take the... So for my bronzer, I actually want to keep it neutral toned, but not necessarily cool toned. So I am going to take Nude Honey from Pat McGrath Labs. The reason being, so the thing with the Glam palette is I actually never really use this palette in the summer. For me, that is more of a winter palette. It has tones that fit my clothing in the winter a lot more. For me, this actually would fit, like my clothes today, would fit much better with the bronze palette. But obviously we already did the bronze palette, and I would like to complete the series using all the palettes. So we are going to do something a little bit more neutral-ish / as warm as it gets with the Glam palette for a look today. But for my face, I also don't want to go too cool toned, because it would literally make zero sense. It is full on summer outside. All the elements on my clothing are on the warmer side, so I don't want to go too cool toned on my face, which is usually the thing that I would do with a Glam palette. I would go really cool toned with like my blush and my bronzer and my highlighter. But today we're going to have to play a little bit of the balancing act. For blush, I'm going to take this Victoria Beckham Cheeky Posh in the shade Playground, which is this beautiful, sort of like warmer toned, but not too warm toned, I feel like cinnamony color. I will apply it on the back of my hand and stipple it like that with my brush. So we're going for my mom's 70th birthday with the three of us, Hubs, Nicola and I. And we're going to have a big party on Saturday with family and friends in a restaurant. And then we're just going to stay for an additional few days, especially because I need to apply for a new passport. My passport expired in 2020, and I can travel everywhere within the European Union with my ID card, but I basically can't leave the European Union. It's not like I'm planning on leaving the European Union anytime soon. Like, I'm not really planning a trip anywhere that would require me to have a passport. But next year, I'm possibly going to England to another Broadway musical, and also to Dublin, I think, for a congress. And I'm not actually sure what the status of Ireland is now, so possibly I don't actually need a passport to get into Ireland, but I will definitely need a passport to get into the UK, because, you know, they voted out. I'm going to take the Venusian Nude highlighter from Pat McGrath Labs. I think this highlighter straddles the line between neutral and warm very nicely, so it will sort of fit perfectly the look that I'm going for today. I sort of have an idea what I want to do. Ooh, I'm opening up my new Fix Plus from MAC. This is in the coconut version. Doesn't really smell like coconut, I will tell you that already. I've bought this before and I've been disappointed before that I can't really detect any real coconut scent, but you know, I like the idea, and it costs just as much as the usual Fix Plus, so whenever I see it I buy it, and every time I think, oh, I hope it smells like coconut, and then I'm disappointed every single time. So let's talk about the look that I'm going to be doing today with the Glam palette, and maybe just quickly talk about the Glam palette by itself. I think it's actually more versatile compared to the bronze palette. I think the bronze palette will give you like a few looks with very minor variation in the tones of the eyeshadows. I actually think here you can get quite a large variety of looks. You can go for something a bit more like taupe brown, you can take it in a pinker direction, you can even put this beautiful neutral gold, which is what we are going to do today. You can go pretty silver toned if you really wanted to. I don't often go silver toned because I don't think silver shades really flatter me that much. If I had to choose which my favorite like tones to use from this palette are, I will immediately tell you it's these two shades over here when I'm going for like a more cool toned gunmetal-y brown look. I will use the cooler toned browns like the mattes in this palette, like this one, and maybe deepen up with the deepest brown shade, and then I will use these shades on my lids, or maybe this one together with this one and this one in the inner corner. But that's not what I'm going to do today, because it won't fit my clothing at all. So today we're going to take it in as much of a neutral, slightly warm direction as possible. So I'm going to take this shade through my crease today, and then I am going to actually immediately go in with this one, which is like a beautiful brown satin shimmer shade in the outer corners. Then I will have this one all over my lid. Actually, I have these two shades on my lid, sort of like outer corner and then inner portion of the lid. And then I will put this shade in the inner corner of my eyes. And that will be it. Probably some sort of a combination of browns or maybe even this one on my lower lashes. So I'm first going in with the shade Blend here to apply through my crease. You know what is hitting me right now? That I have the feeling this shade looks very similar to Statuesque. Shall we do like the absolute quickest side-by-side swatch? Did I already brag that I hit a pan on Statuesque? I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in another video, but maybe you haven't seen it yet. Let me swatch Statuesque versus that Blend shade. So we have Statuesque and Blend from Natasha Denona. I mean, they are not the exact same shade, but they are pretty close dupes, I would say. Oh, that's really good to know, actually. And I've talked about this before, but while I really like the Glam palette, I find it pretty ordinary in terms of the textures that you're getting in here. There is not a single, you know, more interesting texture in this palette, which I think is a missed opportunity, because with these sort of shades you could do some really interesting things with different textures. So I'm taking this somewhat smaller pencil brush, well, not really a pencil brush, but a crease brush. So this is the Crease Pro from Sonia G, and I'm going to go into this shade. And first I'm going to just apply it here in the outer corners of my eyes and take it slightly towards the center of the lid. I'm going to also reapply it a little bit over glitter glue in a bit, but for now it's sort of doubling as a matte shade, because it has a more satin finish to it, so it does the job quite well. I'm going to take the tiniest bit of glitter glue to apply the metallic gold shade over a glitter base so that it's nice and shiny, and I'm going to reapply a little bit of that brown shade in the outer portion of the eye, also on top of the glitter glue, just so it becomes slightly more impactful than it is now. Just taking the same brush and going to reapply over the glitter glue, and I think you can immediately tell how much more impactful and slightly more metallic this shade becomes. So these shades, these types of like satin shimmer shades, are quite nice because they're quite versatile that way. And now I'm going to take a flat shader brush and go into this beautiful metallic gold shade and apply that on the inner portion of the lid. I really like this shade. It's not too warm toned, it's not too cool toned. I would describe this really as a neutral gold. And here in the center between the two shades, I'm sort of going to wiggle like this with my brush so that the transition is a little bit smoother. I think to complete the look, I'm just going to take this shade here, the shade Smoke, which is a mid-tone, sort of like neutral type brown, to apply on my lower lashes and call it a day for this super simple look. As you can see, I completed the look with a red lipstick, and I chose for Palazzo from Lisa Eldridge. This is one of her luxuriously lucents, and the reason I went for this specific color is because I wanted to also remain in neutral territory even with the lipstick, and I think Palazzo also like kind of remains in the more neutral territory of reds. Now, the Glam palette, I always really like the looks that I can get from it, but I don't love them. I always feel like there's a little bit of drama missing, and that's just because of how plain the textures in this palette are. I think that is really the only true critique that I have for this palette, that it is just so plain. I really need to get going to work now. I really hope that you enjoyed this little traveling through time and this week of Natasha Denona palettes. Let me know what you thought about all of the looks, which one was your favorite. I have one more video, like I said, coming up probably in the weekend. I'm very curious for your reaction on this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye!